Thank you. Good evening, and glad to have all of you here tonight. I know that you're probably disappointed because you won't hear Bryant Strong preaching tonight. You'll only this simple little presentation. What are you laughing about? Oh, never mind. Okay. So glad, so happy to be able to give you this report on our church's continued involvement in the work that goes on down in Guyana. And one thing we need to be crystal clear on. Is this about the medical mission? Is this about the medical delivery, about the ability to provide medicine to the people down there? Is that what we're doing this for? Absolutely not. We're doing it because we do care about the people. We do sincerely care about the people. But there's only one reason that we are doing this, and this is to have the opportunity to show them that we care enough to where they will be willing to listen to us when we open the Word of God before them. So we always keep that in mind when we're on these trips down there. It's not about the medicine. We're providing them with some momentary relief. For most of these people, they don't have access to medicine throughout the year. We're giving them 30 days, 90 days. This time, due to the amount of medicine that we took with us, we were able to give them, in some instances, vast quantities of medicine that may last them half a year, in some cases even a year. But this is still a drop in the bucket. It's not about the medical mission. It's about go down there, the opportunity to plant a seed, to plow a field a little bit to where the Word can be planted at some point. And as Brian pointed out, the village that we went into this time, Patarnau, is a village that is without a church. Now they do, as do most villages, there is a Catholic influence down there, but there is no scriptural church in that area. And you'll see as we kind of go through this, we'll touch on a little bit of this. It is a field that is ripe for harvesting down there. With that said, and by the way, this is open forum, so if I'm not touching on something you want to know about, please speak up. Happy to answer any questions, and we can just kind of make this free form. All right. See if I can get this going. All right. So we left after most of us got up on a Thursday morning, usually around 5, 6 o'clock, caught a plane or went over to Pensacola at 3:30. John was good enough to deliver us over there at 3:30 in the afternoon on Thursday to catch a flight. Unfortunately, due to the way the airlines are running right now, or at least the way Caribbean is running, we were not able to catch a Miami flight in order to go through Port of Spain and on down to Georgetown. So we had to go via New York City. So we caught a flight at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday, went to Atlanta. Mark, Andy's brother, met us in Atlanta. Then we went up to New York, and we had to lay over a while. Well, to make a long story very short, by 2:30 in the afternoon on Friday, we arrived in Georgetown. We were finally in Georgetown. So it was a long time from getting up early on a Thursday morning to going to bed Friday evening. It was about a 40-hour day for us. So it was a long trip down there, let me tell you. And there is no sleeping in an airport in New York City, let me tell you that, okay? The good news about it, though, was that the lines, we had no lines going through TSA. TSA, I mean, it was no lines whatsoever, straight on through. And even coming back into the country in immigration, it took us mere minutes to get through immigration. So that was kind of nice, but I would rather take some long lines than have the more direct path. Okay, so most of us have been in presentations before where we've talked about the country. Guyana, I've forgotten where the bucket, or where the, oh, there it is. Guyana, the country of Guyana, this is on the upper east side of South America. Actually, I don't know, in my mind, I always think about, anything that's below Mexico has got to be in the other hemisphere. Well, this is still actually above the equator. You don't cross the equator to get to Guyana, but it's a few degrees above the equator, so it's a very hot, arid country. Now, whoops, I'm sorry. We fly into Georgetown, which is the coastal city, and Georgetown is really the only big city. It's the only real city that's in Guyana. Lethem, which is where we fly to in order to then go out to the villages, is a small town. It's a small town. Now, I have to admit, it has improved significantly in the last couple of years. They actually have, and I'm not making fun of them at all, they actually have a divided highway of traffic on each side. So they've really improved quite a bit. The town of Lethem is recovering. There are a lot of closed stores. The electronics place where we bought the television for the school from is closed, but they're starting to see signs that things will reopen. So they're struggling like every other city throughout the world to make ends meet right now. So anyway, we fly into Lethem, and from Lethem is approximately right here, this little place right here, and we're going to go to Patarnau village. Now, that is, as the crow flies, it's only about 25, 30 miles. It's not a great distance. It's about 2 hours. Okay, it's about a 2-hour drive to get down there. And the roads are in a lot better condition than they have been. The main road, which is still a dirt road or a clay road, was nicely graded. It's in great shape. So you're able to go a little bit faster, but still you're probably going about 40, 45, maybe 50 in some stretches, but that's a stretch. So this is, since we took a drone down there this time, we were able to show you what never mind. Okay, so at any rate, this is kind of a bird's eye view of what an average village really down there in Guyana looks like. That you have a kind of a central area, and the village is spread out throughout here. Now, keep in mind that these people live in the village, but all of them have farms, and they call it farms, but it's not like the farms we have here. Either farms or in some cases ranches. One of the people that we were dealing with a lot has a ranch that's located well away from here, about 15, 20 minutes on a motorcycle away from there, a lot longer if you're walking. But they go to their farms or ranches every day in order to do the work and in order to bring home something to eat. Now keep in mind, there's not refrigeration around here. There's most of these houses, if they have electricity, they have it only because they have solar power that the government has provided, a little panel, a little battery, and a light bulb or two. It's not like you have a fully electrified house as you would in our neck of the woods. Now, one of the improvements that we have seen is that the villages, the government has made a commitment to most of the villages and has actually put Wi-Fi into the villages. So you'll see that the structure that we stayed in this time actually has a whole bunch of solar panels, Wi-Fi, with a huge bank of batteries, a really complex, what looked like to me state-of-the-art Wi-Fi equipment, and the few people that might have electronic devices actually would come around where we were staying throughout the day or into the night so that they could get on the Wi-Fi. Okay, so, and there's not a lot of people that have either phones or tablets or computers that they can do anything with, but the few that do, they did. It was nice because we were able to text every night. Now the Wi-Fi can be kind of spotty, but we were able to text and let everybody know what was going on. We kept Brian informed anyway. I'm sure he kept y'all informed, right? So at any rate, this is a little bit closer view of this village. And back up here was the river. I'll go back right quick. There's a river that we had to cross to get into the village. This is the road that we came in on. We crossed the river here and came up. And you see this kind of darker area that's all around that almost makes this look like an island? Well, during the rainy season, this is pretty much an island. The the water rises to a level that comes right around through here, and when you're going up the banks, it's probably about 45 to 50 foot. The water rises about that much in the river during the really flooded parts of the season. So they almost are an island during that time. So the village, we stayed in this little area right here, nice little compound, and this is the health care center that you'll see later on in the slides, where they do have a health care there. There are some modern buildings that are a school, the school for the kids, and some accommodations for the teachers. While we were there, it's not on this slide because this slide is too old. This Google picture is too old. But there was a line of COVID isolation, probably about at least from here to our door, if not from here to our almost to the parking lot, that were like those PVC type of buildings that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace like that. They're made out of that type of structure. They were probably about 10 foot was in them. Could you imagine being in a COVID isolation chamber in this area of the world with no no fans and no windows in the building? So if the COVID didn't kill you, that would, I'm sure. So at any rate, we did not see a lot of evidence of COVID down there. At least the people that we treated, the villages seemed to be in pretty good shape as far as COVID. We didn't hear much about it even in Latham. There are cases, but it's not as though that things were really bad. Now, I can tell you that everywhere we went, we saw people wearing masks. And almost every place you walked into, especially government-type places, and even restaurants, they spritzed your hands with some, we don't know what it was. It smelled like pure Clorox, so I'm sure it ruined our clothes. But at any rate, they were doing what they could to keep the contaminants down. So this is us getting ready to, in Latham, getting ready to head out to, this is in Georgetown, us getting ready to head to Latham. This is the plane we took this time, one of the nicest planes we've taken down there. They have less air traffic between Latham and Georgetown right now, just due to the restrictions. The border in Latham over into Brazil is closed. There is some traffic that comes across, but it's very minimal. Therefore, the traffic that would be keeping these airlines going is almost cut off. So they're running airlines Monday, Wednesday, Friday of one week, and like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or something like that of the next week. So it kind of messed up us because we were on unfortunately, a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday cycle, and therefore we had to fly back on Thursday instead of being able to stay until Friday, which meant that we ended up in Georgetown more days than we would have liked and less days in the village. Getting close to landing, there's the river that separates Brazil from Guyana, and we're about to land across this river into Latham. And as you can see from where I'm sitting, I was in the first class section of this particular flight. And here we have arrived, and this is Mark. You'll see the front of him a little bit more later, and of course Andy, who you know. We've just arrived there in Latham, and we immediately, this is on a Saturday morning, so we immediately went to the compound there in Latham to start loading out the truck. Didn't take us very long to load it out, got it all packed up, and as you can see, very narrow back seat. Mark and Amit were in the front seats. Andy and I were in the back seat. And of course, well, at least we weren't out on the back of the truck this year, but it might have been, well, never mind. But at any rate, Andy still has size 16 feet, and they just don't really fit underneath anything in the back of a truck this size. But it is what it is. It was at least air conditioned. So We did stop for coffee. This is a little place that's not too far from Patarnau, where we have stopped the last few years that we've been down there. And there's a little table right here, and he always has these little Dimitas cups, and they make coffee the Brazilian way. They put the sugar in as they're brewing the coffee, and it's really good. I mean, it's worth going down to Guyana just to get this coffee, let me tell you. Am I right, John? Okay. And this is also kind of the local butcher shop, as you can see. So outdoor butcher shop. We're headed in. This is the river that we're about to go across that I showed you before. And you kind of, the people like Ahmet, they know the land, they know the landmarks in order to navigate around the holes that are amongst the rocks in order to cross in the right places. So we made our way across the river and eventually get to the other side, and we're entering the village. You see a real mix of homes in these villages now, in that you still see a lot of homes that are kind of in this conventional style where it's mud brick and thatch. And by the way, do you know what it's called when they're preparing to put thatch on a roof? They were talking about they were going to trash somebody's house. And I'm thinking, is that like rolling a house in America? Trash, yeah, no, we're going to trash it. And it's like, you're going to do what? I mean, I was thinking, these were really nice people. And trashing a house is where you put thatch on the house. That's called trashing a house, where they renew the thatch that's on there. And by the way, they look for certain signs in the weather. It has to be the right moon, it has to be the right phase, it has to be the right this and the right that, before they will pick the palm fronds in order to thatch or trash a house. Very interesting. I'm sure it's not based on just some lore, but there's probably some very practical reason for why the thatch works better when it's harvested under those conditions. But I don't know the answer to that. So at any rate, again, this is kind of a standard type of compound. You have the house there, which is really where they sleep, and they will keep stuff. This is kind of where they live. This is the outdoor cooking area. They don't cook inside the house, but they'll have an outdoor cooking area where they do most of their preparation, and that's really where they live, and they probably will sleep out there most of the time too, weather permitting. Beautiful vistas. This is kind of up on, as you saw, when we looked at the first one, Patarnau is kind of this island that's up above all the surrounding area. So you look, this is actually pictures taken from a canal that they had just built not too long ago, and I'll be showing you some pictures of that in a moment too. And it's in the very, very central, the highest part of the village, and you look out around and the vista out over all of the structures that are around this canal. These are the buildings that we were working out of. This is where we set up the medical clinic, and this is kind of their gathering area for the village, where they'll hold meetings and other types of things. There's two rooms back here and a kitchen, kind of a kitchen area up front. And this is where we stayed. They have some bathrooms that are semi-running, semi-working, a bathroom that's semi-working as long as you have a full bucket of water and you pour it really fast. Oops, sorry. Keep going the wrong way. And as you can see, the panels up there on top, and this is the location that they've set up the Wi-Fi here in this village. Have our medical clinic, Church of Christ, and notice that it is a small C. I had to argue with the person that made this sign because they just wanted a capital C on that Church of Christ. It just bothered them to have a small case C on church. This is what the inside of the building looked like. A very nice building. It's a very, very nice facility for us to work out of. First of all, it does have a bathroom inside this structure too. Again, you have to, you kind of had to jiggle stuff and use a bucket, but I mean, you had running water and you had plumbing, so it was a very nice structure. This is kind of looking at it from the other end, and one of the things that we provided that we now have in our box is we have some lights, LED lights, 5 panels of LED lights that pull like no power whatsoever. So we can run it off of a Yeti battery that we also ship down there, and it makes us very, very self-sufficient. Though we did have a gas-powered generator with us that Amit used. You know, I really didn't want him to have to run the generator that much, but you know, it was real hard to argue with having a fan blowing on you all night long. So we really didn't argue too much about that, got to tell you. So Mark had a fan and we had a fan, and it was really nice. This is Mark sitting at his station. This was the nursing station. That you came through the door, and Glenn Brown, who was actually a student of a really good preacher down there. Glenn Brown accompanied us down there, and he acted as our intake person. He was sitting by the front door, and he wrote up all the people that came in there, got their basic information, and then they would go to Mark. I'm sorry. He would go to Mark, if I can get back to where I was supposed to be. I'm trying to use my green button. They would go to Mark, and Mark would take their temperature, take their blood pressure, also run some tests at Bandy's direction, may have done an iron test. He would do some other tests, cholesterol tests. There were a number of tests that we were able to do for the people down there. So Mark was doing that input, and then back here is where the doctor's office was located. So some more pictures of Mark doing his thing, and later on, Jude Isaac joined us, and Jude is actually, he was a medic, is that right, Jude? He was a medic anyway, at any rate, and he is also Amit's wife's father, who lives in this village. And Amit is the person that coordinates the interior trips for us. And we'll see some who helped us considerably. And it also was nice because, of course, he speaks the language down there. English is the language of Guyana, but still the Amerindian Indians speak a number of different dialects depending on the village that you're in. And this is where Glenn Brown was sitting to do the intake, weigh them, do a couple of basic things before they would go to Mark. After they went to Mark, this is the doctor's office. This is the inside of his office. And interestingly enough, there was a sign that said, please keep this place clean by who? Now, of course, that's the World Health Organization. Don't know if they actually showed up and posted that, but at any rate, it was on the wall. So we kept the place clean. This is another view of Andy's office. The Tushao of the village went out and got a canvas cot there so that Andy could do ultrasounds. Andy had a tablet with him plus a handheld, that's it right there, handheld ultrasound unit. We also had a mini refrigerator because there were some things that some of the tests that he wanted to run, if it wasn't kept below a certain temperature, the test would not run. So we came prepared this year both with a Yeti that we have a solar powered or a solar panel that we could hook up to keep the Yeti powered up. And honestly, a refrigerator that size, the Yeti would not even burp running it throughout the day. So it was just all of the other things, the electronics such as the handheld unit. Dr. Andy did try to he would not do ultrasounds for pregnant women because that was the primary thing that every pregnant woman that came in there wanted to have an ultrasound to see what her baby looked like. But Andy didn't feel like, well, what prescriptive, it didn't serve a purpose. and it takes a while. It would take about 15 to 30 minutes for him to do the ultrasound. And when you've got people standing outside, what he tried to do was he gave tickets to the people that he wanted to do an ultrasound on, primarily having to do with gallstones and things like that, things where he could maybe not tell them what was happening, but could tell them, give them a more definitive diagnosis on this isn't a problem. You don't have this issue. Okay, it was more to relieve their anxiety about certain conditions that could exist. So he would give them a ticket, and we tried to do that in the evenings after the crowd had disappeared, either to come very early in the morning or come in the evening to do the ultrasounds. Andy working away with a group of people in there. So this is kind of what it looks like while the medicine is taking place down there. After they finished that, they would come out and they would go to the pharmacy and get whatever Andy had written up on the form as to what was to be dispensed to the individuals. We had a pretty good array of drugs. Most of the stuff we knocked down here in the U.S. to where when we sent it down there, instead of, you have these big bottles of drugs, and it's probably 2/3 full with a whole bunch of cotton in it, right? And the big bottles take up a lot of space. So in order to really take advantage of not shipping a huge bunch of space down there, we repacked as much as we could here in the U.S. and broke stuff down into the size of the delivery size that we normally would hand it out. Really makes things a lot more efficient. These are some of the drugs that we did not break down just because we wanted to keep them as fresh as possible. Anything that was going to have an expiration that would allow us to use it next year, we didn't open those if we could avoid it. We also had plenty of sunglasses and regular glasses. We pretty much ran out of the 150s. They really need, they really want to have 1.25 or 1.5. Those are probably maybe a 1.75 also. But we had kind of 150, 200, 250, and 300. You don't find a lot of people down there, for whatever reason, that really need, say, a 275 or a 300. They're really more inclined to be looking at the lighter prescription. So we need, word to the wise for us is to go with, we've got plenty of strong glasses down there. As you can see, these were kind of in the order of the sizes that we needed, and we're out of the lightest prescription, but had a lot of the others. And at this point, we still had a lot of sunglasses that we were handing out. We pretty much exhausted our sunglasses by the time we were leaving. We also have tracts that we were handing out with various forms of the word on it, or directions, guidance, and we tried to make sure that all of them got some of that. This is Amit Prasad, who is the guy that he is in the Lord's church and is a very hard worker on behalf of he's a very hard worker on behalf of the church down there, and he's also a very good friend of ours now. He also fed us this time. He took care of preparing breakfast for us and also prepared lunch for us, and I thought did an extremely fine job. Put it this way, I went down there hoping to lose some pounds, and I gained some. So, at any rate, plus he had his wife's brother's wife, who lives in the village. She was preparing these breads for us, bakes, every morning. And I tell you, she used sweet water in her bakes. So these are like donuts on steroids, okay? And by the time we got up every morning about 7 o'clock, there were the hot bakes coming through the door. I got to tell you, life does not get much better. Okay. So at any rate, this was in preparation. That was at the end of the day, preparing for the service at night. As you can see, the lights that we had there really would light up the church the building quite well. The first night we had, I think probably about 27 people on a Sunday night. Glenn Brown preached each night. My humble opinion is that a lot of the groups go down there and the Americans want to preach. I don't think they want to show off or anything, but they want to preach. I think having Glenn Brown, especially because on the next 2 nights he preached in Wapashani, the local dialect, there was rapt attention. Okay, these people were interested in hearing the word. We had about 27 the first night. I think the second night it was about 35, and I think it was 42 the third night. Okay, so it was in a place where the church doesn't exist. I thought it was a huge turnout. And this is a village of, as I said, it's spread out. This is a village of about 600 or 700 people in total. So that's pretty good, considering that there really was no campaign going on. There weren't there's no one going throughout the village letting them know that we were having services every night. It was simply the word of mouth, and while they were going through the clinic each day, Andy and all of us were inviting them to come back that night. Come back. So, wonderful outflow there. This is where, after the services, we would come down to an area right over there, and that's where we bathed every night. So sometimes there were more than one moon out. I'm sorry. But not for me. Okay. And as you can see, it was kind of dark when we were going down to the river each night. It was we did have some moon at that time, but it was beautiful. And I got to tell you, you guys know who have been around here during hurricanes when we've had power knocked out. It's one of the few times you can walk outside and see that there are actually stars in between the stars, in between the stars, in between the stars. I mean, and you go down there and you see this. We had Pegasus right over, absolutely beautiful. And I have one of those apps on my phone that, you hold it up and it tells you, as you rode the sky, it points out the constellations that you're pointing out, or going across, and it was stupendous to see the night sky down there. Tell you what, God in His glory, you can see it down there. This is Kanab that's up on the top of the hill, a new structure that unless they're going to use that as a cooking area or something, have no idea. But all of the materials here, you can see, I had Andy put his hand down just so you had some perspective of what size board that is. All hand planed. See all the saw marks and all the scrape marks, all hand planing on these really, really hard wood. I mean, they do beautiful work down there. This is where we were staying right here, and this is a clinic up here. More shots of. This is the main highway system in the village. Okay. And this is Michael. Michael is the healthcare worker that actually takes care of this health center there. One thing that you don't really get a sense of is how pristine, how clean this place is, how well managed. Everything had its place. He had a huge array of drugs in his cabinets, but they were pretty much the same drug. He didn't have an array of drugs. He had an array of one drug, basically. But everything was very, very, very well put together. He obviously takes a lot of pride in what he's doing down there. And we left him with probably more drugs than he's had the ability to have in his clinic in years. We left him enough worm pills to worm about 3 or 4 villages down there. Now, I'm not making a joke about that. Worms are a problem in most of these villages, so you do find a need for the people to have the opportunity to get worm tablets periodically. So we left him with a lot of stuff that will make him a very popular guy. But you still get a sense of how nice this clinic is. It's well kept up, and he's doing an outstanding job down there. So more seeds that we were planting, more seeds. This is what it looks like in the back of the truck. Now this is Glenn Brown. Notice that Glenn has a jacket on. It's only about 95 degrees, okay? He froze to death on the drive back. And I'm not joking. I'm sitting beside him. I said, "Are you kidding?" "No, I'm cold." Oh, poor Glenn. He'll never ride in the truck again. He wanted to ride out back, and we wouldn't let him ride out back. We made him ride in the cab with us, so he regretted that. The ride back, more across the country. This is an area that during the flooding, during the rainy part of the year, this is all flooded to a depth. I mean, you look around and you don't see anything to hold the water. And it's like, it must be an outrageous amount of water that falls in this area for an area like this to flood to a depth where they can only access the villages by boat. I mean, that's the only way they can get to a lot of these villages is by boat. It's just outrageous. This is the Kanuku Lodge, which is where we stayed. And as you can see, this is the condition of the main highway there in Lethem now, so it's really improved. Things have, this particular lodge is undergoing some reconstruction inside. I mean, it's not up to a standard that you might have in a lot of places in the U.S., but it's a very nice, very comfortable place to stay. Wonderful place to stay. Next morning, we're headed from this is actually where the airline works out of, and we're headed back into Georgetown. This is arriving back at Georgetown. Georgetown, this is the Atlantic Ocean, and Georgetown rounds a corner right here and then runs down the coast. So Georgetown is basically this area that's on the corner as this massive river outflows. Where we stay is, there's a little green veranda right here, but this is the Signature Inn that we usually stay in when we're there in Georgetown. This is Mark. We're Mark walking. We're headed down to get us some Chinese food that particular night. And this is a soccer game that was picked up in the area where we were staying. There's the goal. They have a tire at both ends. The good news is you don't have to hit the ball through the tires. All it has to do is at least touch the tire. We were thinking this is really some challenging soccer. But these guys, there's the soccer ball. These guys are playing barefoot. Let me tell you, do you have to know how to kick a soccer ball properly if you're playing barefooted? Let me tell you, you'd have a lot of broken toes if you didn't. These kids were kicking the daylights out of this ball. I tell you, we had fun watching them playing. This is what it looks like throughout the town. There's lots of fresh vegetables, lots of produce throughout the marketplace. And Andy and I did a lot of walking about on the days that we were there in Georgetown. We walked, I think, 5 miles one day and about 4.5, according to his little watch, or his little, whatchamacallit. At any rate, he was keeping track of how far we were going. But he had to go down to the into the Atlantic Ocean, and he just wanted to touch it down there, so he did. We did, while we were doing one of our walkabouts, and encounter a cricket match. A cricket match can last up to 5 days, so we didn't see very much of the cricket match. Now, that's a certain type of cricket, test cricket. There's a certain name for it. There are shorter versions of it that only last a day or two, okay? So cricket is not a game that it takes a while. Now, as you can see there, what I'm doing is I'm testing the lay of the land, and Andy's saying, would you bounce a few times? Because he didn't want to walk out there until he could see me bounce on this. And I'm looking back at him like, are you crazy? The zoo that's there in Georgetown. Unfortunately, as with most things, even in our area of the woods, it was closed. But one of the workers, we walked up there and he was telling us, no, 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 you can't come in, you can't come in. And we started walking away and he starts yelling at us. So we come back and he brought us into the zoo. He wanted to take our picture. He wanted us to take his mango, okay? It's not the regular mango that you get down there, but a bull mango. And you can kind of see he's pulled back some of the outside husk, and it's almost like a sugar cane type of texture that's in there. You pull that stuff out and you put it in your mouth like you would sugar cane and chew on it, and then just spit out the strings, if you will. Andy didn't like it, but it was really good. And this is just kind of walking around Georgetown. This is us getting ready. We had to have a COVID test before we could catch the flight back to the U.S. So Sunil had arranged for us to get COVID testing. And this is at Sunil's house. He actually, this was the first time that I've had the opportunity to go to his house. He had the three of us over for dinner at his house. This is Sunil, who does most of the stuff in Georgetown for the church. Now, he does a lot of stuff on the interior, too. He has actually made a number of trips. You see stuff back here against his wall. This is some of the supplies, and he's been making trips into the villages delivering food. Some of the money that we contributed here for the food supplies, that money goes to him. He's loading up trucks, and he's going down, making the very long, it's like a 15 to 18-hour drive to get over to the villages to where he can then make the trek into the villages to deliver food. Stephen. I was about to say Stuart. I knew it wasn't Stuart. Stephen. And this is her, Stephanie's boyfriend, Antonio. So had us over for a really great meal. It was a fun time for all of us. And getting ready to go home. It was time to go home. Brief recap. We saw 256 people. If you were talking to Preacher Andy, it was 300, okay? So, but at the end of the day, that's what the demographics report showed. That's kind of that's the breakdown on the age groups we saw. I tell you, it's a tough life down there for older people, and I was amazed at how good a shape some of those 80-plus-year-old women that came into the clinic, what kind of shape they were in. But quite a few young children in the village, and all of them doing well. We didn't see a lot of COVID in the village. If there was evidence of COVID, we didn't run across it. The people who came into the clinic, all of them were wearing masks. Now, after we left, did the village continue to enforce that? I have no idea, but I'm assuming that the two shall probably put out the word, because no one came to the clinic without a mask on. I was amazed by that. I didn't expect that at all. In-country costs. This isn't the total including the drugs, because we had actually bought the drugs 2 years ago. Drugs were probably, I can't remember how much we spent for drugs, probably around $6,000, $5,000, $6,000. It cost us, in order to get the drugs delivered down there, about another $1,700 to get them shipped down there in some of those purple crates that you were seeing that we were using. So the trip to Patarnau that went to Amit in order to arrange all this was about $2,900 US in order to do everything that needed to be done I call it in country, that's at Lethem. Now, in Georgetown and our travel down there, Sunil had about another $700 that he had spent doing various things, such as running around, both picking us up at the airport, delivering us back, picking us up at the airport to fly to Lethem, and picking it and back, and the trips that he made for us and running us around to get the COVID testing. and various other things. He had also had to run around and get Andy signed up to where Andy has official notification or documentation down there now. And then each traveler can count on about another $2,000 each. That is that's for your flight from from here, basically to get from here down to there, and also the flights to get from Georgetown to Latham. It's not cheap. And of course, everybody has their time away from work, and contrary to popular opinion, I am not retired. And that's pretty much it. Questions, comments? If you are in a position tonight where you need the prayers of the church, this is an opportunity to come forward. And we, your brothers in Christ, brothers and sisters in Christ, would be proud to have the opportunity to help you bear the burdens that you may have upon your shoulders, because we are directed to bear each other's burdens. And if we are not willing to release our sisters, we are denying them of the opportunity that Scripture gives us to bear each other's burdens. So we should take that opportunity when we can. If the case might be that you have not entered into the waters of baptism, having reconciled yourself with God, having repented of the sins that you've committed, and being committed to turning your life into one of obedience to Christ, the waters of baptism are available to you tonight too. So if either of those conditions are before you and you feel the opportunity or feel like you wish to take the opportunity to seize the moment, please come forward as Noah leads us in this song.
Hark the gentle